part 2 of episode 10 of the Progressive Democrats of Howard County podcast, and that is to interview another HoCo4Us Slate member, Drew Roth, fellow Elkridgeonian. How you doing today, Drew? Oh, you're on mute.
Hi, Jake. I'm doing good. And are we Elkridgeonians? What do they call people?
Yeah, that's a good question, but I just invented it. That's what we're called now, Elkridgeonians.
Okay, I'll go. It works for me.
Yeah, if you think of a better one, let me know. But yeah, so I guess I'll start with same question of, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background for those who aren't familiar.
Well, I'm a retired federal employee living here in Elkridge, and I'm an engineer by trade, and I spent my career as a federal employee doing hands-on engineering. I've lived here in Elkridge for 15 years and moved here from Baltimore City, where I lived in a row house in the Fells Point, Canton area for nearly 20 years, for 19 years. And as soon as we moved to Elkridge, I started becoming more and more involved in community organizations and various community projects. The first one I started with was working with the Greater Elkridge Community Association, fighting a proposed intermodal freight yard on Race Road in Elkridge that would have put a massive number of freight trains and truck traffic within a quarter mile of 300 homes. So we fought that and got it to go away. So that was the first accomplishment there, and that involved coordinating with our county, state, and federal representatives, all of whom CSX had got to agree to provide subsidies for this atrocious project that would have wrecked the quality of lives for many, many people nearby. So that kind of was like the first message that, has kind of led me to where we are with HoCo4Us, that we need to get the county government working for its residents and not, and we have a problem now that doesn't happen. Our county government tends to work for campaign contributors, particularly the building industry and developers, whose interests are contrary to those of us residents. Another big issue that we worked on hard, I later became the president of GECA, and this was one of the main things we worked on, was the lack of school capacity in Elkridge. As Tanika mentioned earlier, roads that used to be country roads are not country roads anymore, and there's been a lot of new development. Well, and in Elkridge, a lot of that new development didn't come with schools, and we still don't have a high school. When I moved here, it was shortly before my son was born, and we thought, well, we're moving to Howard County. Elementary school and middle school are right up the road. They're decent. This looks great. High school is, pretty far away and severely overcrowded, but with all the development going on here, by the time our kids in high school, there'll be a new school built. That won't be a problem. Ha, 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 you fooled me. Still no high school. And my son's a sophomore. So, and the reason there's no high school is high schools are developer amenities. Schools are cited because they make new development more profitable for High School 13, which is ostensibly to reduce the overcrowding in Elkridge. It is cited where it is because it is next to a future town center by the family who developed Conterra in Prince George's County and who contributed heavily to both Alan Kittleman and Courtney Watson when they were running for county executive to make sure that the next high school was next to their development on land that they would sell to the county. And right there, all of that is, in a nutshell, everything that's wrong with the county government. They were not making a decision based on what is in the interest of families and students at all. They were making a decision of what made the most campaign contributions for themselves and what would maximize profits for the developer. And where the kids go to school was not a consideration. So that's
So Drew, it's really good to be running on the slate with you. I think, one thing I consider, I always mentioned this, when it comes to county issues, the most, 90% of the 90% of the things that affect us on a daily basis are related to zoning and land use decisions. And because of that, your knowledge on these issues, I think are invaluable, because for the most part, as in the central committee, I don't believe there's any focus on that other than if a central committee member wants to join a project, we'll just call it maybe the Rouse project or something, unless central committee member wants to join the Rouse project, as a board member to help take over some valuable land for Howard Hughes. That's to the extent a central committee member has been involved in zoning and land use in the past. So having said that, I think, looking at the next 4 or 5, I want to say in the short term, maybe 4 or 5 years, but in the long term, decades, we're coming up with HoCo by design. What do you think, should voters be aware of, at least, 1 or 2 things voters should be aware of? And why do you think, a central committee member could have an impact, if at all, on those issues?
Well, HoCo by design is hugely important. And one of the things that is really, really important about HoCo by design is it calls for an enormous amount of new development and says not one word about where the schools will be located or when they will be built to provide seats for the students in that new development. Not one word. And schools are a critical land use in Howard County, but our plan for land use for the next 10 years is silent on schools. That's incredibly bad and incredibly wrong. When HoCo by design was first released, voting on it was delayed until after the election. That tells me that the county government did not have the votes to get HoCo by design through the county council. And then HoCo by design went back for another round of public meetings and a bunch of rewriting. And I've read the chapters that have been released with the new rewriting. And what's important is all of the negative feedback that was provided to the first part of HoCo by design did not change the content of what they want to do in HoCo by design. What they did is they changed the words that describe what they want to do. They didn't change what they're going to do. Still no mention of schools, still new dense development all over the place, and trying to open the door to weaken the APFO laws. So this next election is absolutely critical, because HoCo design is just a plan. It has to get implemented with changes to the zoning regulations and changes to the development rules, and those changes have to pass the county council. Right now, the county council has 2 reliable votes that are independent of developer influence, Liz Walsh and Deb Young. It is absolutely critical that in this election, we get 3 members of the county council who will be independent of developer influence. And as it happens, Liz Walsh, Deb Young, and the woman running in the 5th district, who I've met and I can't remember her name. Help me out, guys.
Joan Pontius.
Joan Pontius.
.com. Yes.
Have all taken the no developer funding, no dark money pledge. And I trust them that when it comes time to vote for regulations to implement Howard County by design, they will do the right thing and support development rules under this plan that actually do the happy words that the plan says, to protect the character of our communities and to make sure that government works for everyone throughout the county so that we all receive a fair and equitable share of capital investment and amenities, whether there is new development or existing neighborhoods.
Well, thank you for that, Drew. And you touched on, a lot of different things there, and a big, theme of our HoCo4Us Slate. And, you mentioned the No Developer Donation Campaign Pledge. Our HoCo4Us Slate collectively all signed on to that recently. But one thing that I've heard you say, as long as I've known you, and you've touched on it a little bit, is quote unquote, I am not on team developer. And you support those who are not on team developer. So could you explain, unpack that a little bit and explain, I guess, for people who don't, might not be aware on this issue, like why should people be concerned about developer influence in politics and party, and how is developer interest different or even contradictory from the interests of the community at large?
Well, I think a really great example of this is that, the development community is deep into a lot of county processes, whether it be school redistricting. Redistricting is done to put new development in the schools the developer wants them in, to the capital budget, where what we find is the capital budget for improvements and amenities is targeted towards places where new development is taking place, and very little is spent on established communities. So, as somebody living in Elkridge, I'll use one of my favorite, I'm an avid bicycle rider. There's no bike infrastructure in Elkridge, but the county government spends $1 million a year to put separated bike lanes in downtown Columbia to benefit Howard Hughes. Now, this is crazy. Am I paying taxes as an Elkridge resident to build amenities for Howard Hughes? Why can't we have some amenities in the Route 40 corridor and the Route 1 corridor? This needs to get untangled. And what you see is because there's so much money to be made and more profits to be made in development. When you have members of the council who are independent of developers, the developers will find somebody to run against them and back them heavily and put giant billboards up and down Route 1 and Route 40 faces on it, right? And for example, Naveen Khartoum running against Liz Walsh. And the thing that's crazy about this is Naveen is running for the 1st district, which is Elkridge and Ellicott City, but she's getting thousands and thousands of contributions from Howard Hughes Corporation, the developer of downtown Columbia. Now, why do we think that Howard Hughes Corporation has an interest in the well-being of the 1st district? They don't. They want to continue the practice of all of the capital investment of the county not being spread about the county fairly, but being concentrated where they are. And so they're buying a candidate allegedly to represent us in the 1st district, who I don't believe for 1 minute is going to stand up and say, hey, wait a minute. Why isn't there any money for amenities in Elkridge and Ellicott City? Why is it all being spent in, where it benefits Howard Hughes Corporation? Not when she's getting thousands of dollars from Howard Hughes Corporation. So this is really key. I mean, I can see where people, in the districts where Howard Hughes Corporation operates would have a shared interest with Howard Hughes and might be interested in supporting a candidate they support, but I can't imagine why anyone in the 1st district would vote for a candidate backed by a huge business who, has publicly stated, we make a lot of money because we control the Howard County government on their investor documentation. So this is why it's really important. When it comes time to vote, look for that no developer money, no dark money pledge, because that means that those candidates are going to be working for the average Howard County resident and in our interest, because it's HoCo for us. Sorry,
Drew, you're getting me worked up here because you know, these are really really important issues that you have discussed, and you know, I think people really need to pay attention, as you have you know, impressed upon, I think, the audience the importance of the next HoCo, the next general plan. And you know, as we close our second part of this candidate series, I think I don't remember any central committee candidates who have, you know, delved into these important county issues the way that the first two central committee candidates in HoCo4Us Slate have, as you and Tanika. So I think this, you know, this would be very good, and we look forward to interviewing the rest of the slate. And so thank you for agreeing to interview with us, and to our audience, look out for more episodes of interviews with candidates. So thanks again, Drew. Jake, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Hiruy pretty much said it all. You know, we'll see everybody for episode 11. If you want to support Progressive Democrats of Howard County, HoCoProgressives.com, sign up for our email list, become a dues paying member, et cetera, et cetera. Other than that, thank you, everybody. See you for episode 11.